for coming or tuning in on the internet.
Hello, Internet.
You don't want to know what this man does with the internet. Mr. What? Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, your turn. You're the star.
You don't want to know what I do on the Internet. That's true.
Okay.
Okay.
This is Mr. Rich Moore. Give it up.
Thank you.
He's visiting us from
Whoa.
Southern.
Wait a minute.
Oh,
Google's
buddy.
chair is all. This is.
Add to the drama.
I don't know.
We want to care about the characters on the stage, so
We
you
do.
put them in
We
some
do.
danger.
Yeah. No, you kind of created a little conflict here, and you're trying to see what I'll do, how I'll adjust to it.
My goal is
And
to
I'll do
create.
this.
My goal is to create as much conflict.
Checkmate.
Oh. Well, well, I have the same thing. I think just have one nail
Oh,
or
okay.
something.
Oh,
It's
I
to
see.
fold up, so it folds up.
You guys have a slide here in
We
your
have a
lobby.
slide. Yeah. It's
That's
not.
pretty
It goes.
cool.
It goes into the lobby. I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think that the entrance to the slide is on an like a floor that you can't go on unless you have like a special badge. So
Well,
it's like.
where's the fun in that?
Yeah, that's what I wanna
then
know.
Why would they?
That's
It's
what I
like
wanna
the
know.
Winchester Mystery House or something.
There's also in Building 43. There's a bunch of doors that open into nothing. It's,
Yeah,
it's really
well.
spooky. What are we here for?
I don't know. I came for the slide, and now I'm finding out that I can't
We'll get you
ride
in.
it.
We'll get you in.
Do you have a fireman's pole?
No, like the Ghostbuster house. New York has one.
Oh, okay. Well,
Cool.
good.
Oh, of course.
Let's see.
There's a-
All
All right, we got it. What else you got? What else you want to know?
Do you have one of those balls where you put your hands on it and the plasma makes your hair stick
Oh,
up?
like a Tesla coil kind of
yeah.
thing?
Or
Probably. I would imagine. Do you have
got
it?
one of those?
Nerd fail.
Do you have a Jacob's ladder?
Is that like a?
No. Gotcha. I'm
Mm.
kidding. Oh, it's really cool here.
There's a lot.
It's an
Yeah.
amazing place. It's
We're-
my first time coming to Google.
We're really happy to have you.
Well, thank you.
You all know this man is a director of Disney's new film Wreck-It Ralph. No.
Thank you.
Right. Yeah. But that's not. That's just the tip of the iceberg for you.
The tip of the
Just
animation iceberg.
And you've done so many things. I want to go over some of those things as we start.
Sure,
I have
all
this
right.
clicker, and I'm going to go first.
Whoa. This thing just changed.
Yeah, it changed.
Oh, you did it. Okay.
I did it.
Okay.
So you you are a college graduate.
I did go to a college.
Did you graduate?
I graduated from a college with a degree in cartoons.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Awesome. And tell me
Which
a little.
makes me the dumbest person in this room.
Well, college was less.
No
expen-
math. No math.
I also went to art school, so
Yeah?
I'm.
Which one?
I went to Parsons in New York.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, they didn't have if they had a cartoon program, I would have done it, but they didn't. So
I
couldn't.
love Parsons in New York.
All right.
That's great.
But I also don't know a thing about math. I have no idea.
Good.
Yeah. It'll be just the
We
three
got
of
all
us.
these guys to
Yeah.
ask, you know.
And well, your school was pretty impressive. There are a lot of animators come out of there.
Yes.
Started by Mr. Walt Disney.
Mr. Walt Disney. Walt
Yeah.
Elias Disney.
When you work for a Disney movie, do they just forgive your student loans? Is that how they pay you?
No, actually, they know where you are, and they were
Yeah.
on my back every day. You know, it was just the email every day.
So
Just a reminder.
yeah,
You know.
yeah, interest. Changed again.
Yeah.
Back here. So I did a little research on the internet, and you had some pretty amazing people in your class back at CalArts.
Did, yeah.
Do you want to identify some of the folks back here?
Well, let's see. That would be me in the yellow shirt or that kind of orange shirt.
Basketball player, the athlete
Yeah.
of the group.
See. Look at that. No, that's Steve Markowski standing next to me, and I think he was holding the basketball. That's Tony Fucilli on the right-hand side, an amazing animator.
Yeah, all these people are wicked accomplished.
Yeah, and we have Andrew Stanton in the black shirt in the front
Director
row
of
there.
Wall-E.
Director of Wall-E.
Bunch of other stuff.
And Finding Nemo. We have right behind him Jeff Pigeon, who's a story artist at
This
Pixar.
is his picture, actually, his photo. I stole it from his.
Really? From
website.
Jeff?
Hmm.
Well, he's a good guy,
Yeah,
you know,
good
to
for
share
Jeff.
it with.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you,
It's
Jeff.
a nice picture. And right next to Jeff in the Hawaiian shirt, that's Jim Reardon.
Co-writer of Wall-E and co-writer of Wreck-It Ralph.
Ralph. And Jim and I worked on The Simpsons together for a long time. And right in front of Jim in the pink blouse is Brenda Chapman, the director of Brave.
Yeah.
So a lot of good people in that
A lot of
class.
good people. Yeah, that's
Good
exciting.
folks.
What would you?
Solid.
So what did you
Salt
learn?
of the earth types.
Yeah, just good Midwesterners. Yeah. What did you learn in art school? You didn't learn math. We know that.
What did I learn in art school?
Yeah.
We learned from each other really in art school. As you see, our class was, it was a little bit bigger than this. This is not everyone in our class, but we were like a little family. There were about 25 of us in our class, and we really learned how to collaborate with one another very, very well. At CalArts then, as it is now, the main goal is to produce a student film at the end of the school year, and it was always our opinion of our class, like the better our entire class's selection of films were, the better the show was. No one was ever in it just for themselves. We really helped each other a lot with our films. And that wasn't always the way, in other classes at CalArts. And even if someone was, I can remember Brenda was working on a movie, a student film about an old lady who'd been forgotten on her birthday, and was having some troubles with the story, So even though it was not something that the rest of us had any interest in, doing that type of film, it was very serious, it wasn't very funny at all. Everyone kind of put aside our own tastes, and really jumped in to help Brenda with her film, and that's just the way we were, and we would always kind of check on each other and, go around. We really enjoyed each other's company, and we really kind of honed the art of kind of being there for one another and collaborating and helping each other make each other's films or whatever the project was better than it could be with just the one person working on it.
It's like the Wu-Tang of animation.
That's right. Yeah, pretty much. And this was also kind of the way that we were year 10 at CalArts of the character animation department. And this was also kind of the way that year 1 was like. And that was guys like Brad Bird and Joe Ranft and John Musker, John Lasseter. This was kind of a tradition and a way of collaborating that was kind of born earlier, at CalArts. And really, I think when John, and Andrew and Pete Docter, and all these guys from that school, began to kind of creatively percolate at Pixar, what they talk about the process,
Sure.
At Pixar, you hear about that a lot, and the brain trust and just that kind of collaborative effort that goes into all their movies is really, I think, it's a principle that was born kind of from that college, from those classrooms at CalArts. So I really look back at those days, like day one, as being just the beginning of a journey, kind of into a wonderful kind of medium, and mindset that's just served everyone who's been a part of it so well, like in their careers and in their lives.
So another project that after you got out of school that you started on was the Mighty Mouse, New Adventures of Mighty Mouse.
Yeah.
That was another hugely collaborative, just pool of genius.
Yeah, there was a lot of great people working on that show, and you have to remember that this was the summer of 1987. I'm sure a lot of these people weren't born, at that time, or very young, and you little guy, I'm sure you weren't around, the state of animation was not good in those days. It was a
lot of cheap stuff.
It was a lot of Saturday morning cartoons and afternoon half hours that were basically they were commercials, for cereals and for toys, so it was not as we know it today, So none of us graduating at that time were really going into this business, for the money or the prestige or the fame, or, we didn't know what we were kind of stepping into, just that we loved the medium,
Yeah, right.
So to graduate and then be able to step into a project like Mighty Mouse that was spearheaded by Ralph Bakshi, who was an absolute, hero of mine for the different kinds of things that he tried to make, or that he did make when I was a young person. To be working with Ralph, as a first job was an absolute, it was the best first job, a young animator could have at that time, because Ralph's he's a maverick, he's a bigger than life type of guy, who really made a name for himself in animation and did some great stuff. And to see him in action, I mean, he's loud, kind of, just big, it's like Jackie Gleason and Fred Flintstone smushed together into one weird, person. A lot of people here don't know who either of those people are. But it means a big, loud guy,
who lived with dinosaurs.
With dinosaurs. He was a great man to work with and a mentor to me, because you would look at him and say, like, wow, if Ralph can make it in this business, I can too. It's he was a real artist and a visionary, and a wonderful person to work for. And on that crew were people like myself and Jim, Andrew, Jeff. John Kricfalusi was a major contributor to
creator
the
of
thing.
Ren and Stimpy.
Creator of Ren and Stimpy. Tom Minton, who's a really well-known animation writer, wrote for things like Pinky and the Brain. Bruce Timm, who kind of rebooted and revamped Batman, into the animated, adventures of Batman. And just a ton of other, Eddie Fitzgerald. I mean, I could go down the line.
Just an amazing
it was an amazing group of people to be working with who really loved animation. We were not there to sell a product. We were not there to, sell a cereal or a toy. We were there to tell good stories, funny stories, and make entertainment. And we were very lucky, as graduating artists out of CalArts to kind of land in that position, at that time.
So you did a bunch of other stuff as well, but in the interest of eventually talking about Wreck-It Ralph, there's a few other projects I want to hear your thoughts on. So you were a huge contributor to these guys.
Well, that was a great. About a year after working for Ralph, another friend in the business said, you got to check it out, because the Tracy Ullman shorts, the Simpsons shorts that they're doing, or that they did for TV, they're going to make a series out of it. And they're hiring people right now, and they've got some storyboard positions open. I know you like it. You should check it out. So because I love Matt Groening, I loved Life in Hell and just all his comics, and I loved Jim Brooks. From a young age, I liked Taxi and Mary Tyler Moore Show and his movies that he did. So, and it was like, wow, they're going to do a primetime animated show. And a lot of people thought like, oh, well, this is, I give it 2 episodes and it bombs, and
27 seasons later.
So, so that was the summer of 1989, and I started as a storyboard artist, and it was a very, very small crew of people, again, who were there, because they loved animation and they believed in this project. And along the way, I ran across, to just make the story short, I was promoted to be a director after doing a few storyboards on that show, because the producers felt that I, out of a lot of the people there, got the humor and understood what the show was about.
And some of the greatest episodes, like the first Halloween episode.
Yes,
and
the first that particular story.
Yeah.
The first Halloween episode was divided up between the 3 directors at the time. That was myself and David Silverman and Wes Archer. We each took an act. And I did this act and
how to cook for 40 humans,
and which was so much fun. And I mean, I loved designing the characters, and it was a chance to kind of do something very kind of a pulpy 50s, schlocky horror type movie thing.
Sure.
So it was great to be a part of. And it was, it's not seldom in your life, or in my life at least, that you have a feeling in the moment when it's happening that you kind of get it, like, or you get what's going on, And I remember when I first started directing on The Simpsons that, like, reading the scripts, that we were producing and working with, that this was really what I got into the business for, that it made sense, like, well, this is what I wanted to do, and now I have this opportunity to do it, and this could be great, this could be really, really, this is as good as like a Jay Ward cartoon or something, that this really could be something. And I had this feeling of, I would not be able to live with myself if I do not give every bit of my, heart and soul for this show, because I wouldn't want to think like, what if I'd worked harder, could The Simpsons have been something, there was just this moment of like, dedicating myself to the thing of like, I will do what, I believe in this material so much, that I will do whatever it takes to kind of deliver what I think, is the end result that it deserves.
And what did that mean, like in real life? Like, did that mean you pulled all-nighters, or you?
I mean,
what was it like?
It's funny because I was just talking with Amy, who came in with me today, that there were, I would say, like between 1990 and 1992, that's a big period of time that I don't remember a lot of stuff other than being in those studios working on those shows, like who was president or current events or what shows were on or what movies were out.
Sure.
Was just out the window. It was
Terminator
2 years.
Was decent.
I resent The Simpsons for robbing me of that experience.
Yeah.
But it was at least like a year and a half or 2 years of 7 days a week, 12 to 18-hour days, for a year and a half straight of like producing those episodes. But it wasn't, no one was telling me to do it.
Yeah.
It was coming from me. I was demanding myself to be there and just make it the best it could be, because we were doing it with a really tiny crew too.
Yeah.
I mean, a fraction of the people that work on the show now, where I was doing the job of what they would now, divide between 5 people,
Sure.
so, but and the other directors were doing the same thing too. It wasn't just me. It was that very small crew was like killing themselves because they really, really believed in it.
So wasn't your only project with Matt Groening?
No.
And so something that has a lot of love at Google.
Would be this thing.
Yeah, Futurama.
Futurama.
So talk a little bit about like what did going from like a scrappy upstart small team to like kind of the second version of a kind of a vision here. Like, how did that work out?
It worked out that, I was on The Simpsons for the first 5 seasons, and then I worked on another show with Gracie Films, who produces The Simpsons, called The Critic, and we did two seasons of that. And after that was finished, Matt, even from season 2 of Simpsons, always had the idea for Futurama. I remember one afternoon he took David, Wes, and I, the other directors, out to lunch, and kind of pitched through, this idea for Futurama. And we're like, that sounds really cool, Matt. Are we going to work on it? Yeah, I'm on it. When do we start? Oh, I just have to kind of write some things down, and
Sure.
and then we'll get around to it. But I'm working on it. And in Matt's style, he's got so much stuff going on, with The Simpsons. It was just like, such a beast, that took his time. It wasn't another 7 years, or 6 years until I heard from him again. And I was now working at another studio called Rough Draft that was founded by another CalArts grad, Greg Vanzo, and I was a partner in that studio. And Greg was associated with The Simpsons also. And Matt came to us and said, okay, I'm doing this science fiction show, and I want you guys to work on it. And it was a pretty scrappy production. It wasn't. It's not like things became kind of fat and benign. It was still lean and mean. Because at that point, The Simpsons was still kind of considered like, well, that's an anomaly. You can't kind of King of the Hill was kind of, recreating that success, and Family Guy was kind of happening at the same time as Futurama. So it was really, Fox was really kind of banking, it wasn't, a done deal, it was like, well, what can you guys do?
Yeah.
And one thing that Greg and I said to Matt, about Futurama was like, look, if it's going to be a science fiction show, it's got to be the quality of the animation has to be higher than The Simpsons. We can't do like we would do on the Halloween shows, where we would try to kind of, animate, cool looking stuff, and it was a little clunky. We really wanted it to look nice, but also in Matt's style, and that was always Matt's thing was, well, don't make it too nice. I don't want it to be shiny. I want it to look like someone drew it,
right.
So it was at that point that Greg and his brother Scott Banzo, who was like the head of technology at Rough Draft, they kind of cracked, and they wrote this program that could take computer animation, and render it with the black line around it, where it looked like it was like toon shaded, type stuff. And today that means nothing, but this was 1989, or no, 1997. I'm sorry. And yeah, that's a big difference. That was kind of before that you had stuff like, what was that movie? Titan AE, that Fox
like
did.
Particle animator,
well,
like
it
fluid
was like
dynamics.
all the vehicles looked like these beautiful rendered, shiny ships, and then with 2D animation, flopped on top of it, and it didn't marry together, and it made the world unbelievable.
So, which is maybe a good transition into your latest picture. This is a Spanish film. It's a foreign film.
Mm-hmm.
But
I wanted to work in Spanish,
Claro que sí.
I'm from Southern California, and I have deep love for, our southern neighbors.
Sure. So this is totally goes into the realm of computer generated 3D.
Yes.
Although before Wreck-It Ralph, there's a really beautiful short film that seems to be more.
Yeah,
that's really terrific. And it plays around with the 2D, 3D.
Well, it plays, it's, again, taking that concept like we were talking about with Futurama of how to kind of marry 2D and 3D together, because at Disney, where this was produced and where Paperman is produced, where I work, it's unlike any other animation studio today, because we have a group of traditional 2D artists and animators that these are the best in the world at what they do, so a lot of credit goes to John Cars, who created Paperman and directed it, because he wanted to try and create something, using digital animation, but then also merging it with the hand-drawn art, in a way that's different from what you've seen before. And I think it's really a beautiful, like really successful. So
even if you go to the theater just to see that and leave, it's before Wreck-It Ralph starts. That's probably. But I'm saying it's like, that's the added value.
But the only thing, it's black and white, so you'll go there.
Color. There's a
little
color.
bit of color, so you're going to want to stay for
some
color.
Sure.
In Wreck-It Ralph.
Sure. So speaking of color and Wreck-It Ralph, let's talk about
trying to sell it somehow.
Sorry. It's in color. It's an amazing film.
Guys,
if
you want to see a movie in color, come see this one. We've got new colors. We got some colors. It's kind of purple.
So besides
yellow.
Besides the color, there's an awesome cast. All right, we're going into Wreck-It Ralph land now.
Okay, got it.
The cast is amazing. It's a really
very good.
They just seem perfectly cast. So you have Jack McBrayer and Sarah Silverman and John C. Reilly and Jane Lynch as the principals.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just talk about what is it like to, as a director, harnessing the talent of these terrific performers into their cartoon avatars? Like, what is that? What is that experience like?
Well, it was a terrific experience. When Phil Johnston, who's the screenwriter of the movie, and I were developing the story for Wreck-It Ralph, Phil and I have a similar kind of method that we really love the characters. We like to start with the characters and really start from the inside of the main character and kind of build out. rather than just starting with a big world and then kind of populating it.
Sure.
So we were always really, really conscious of who these characters were and who we thought would be great to portray them. A lot of times in animation, sometimes the characters will be created and developed without any, thought going into, well, who could play this, But I'm a firm believer in, there's the old saying that good directing is 75% good casting, So we really wanted to play to the strengths of our actors by creating characters, that they felt comfortable in their skin, and Sarah Silverman was the first one that really just kind of, presented itself clearly in my mind, because we knew we wanted to have this world, of Sugar Rush, that was a candy kart racing world, game world, and but we wanted the character from that world to be seemingly innocent but inappropriate at the same time. And it was just like a bell went off and Sarah's face was in my head, so so that one was kind of nailed very quickly. And once we were once we kind of landed on who Ralph was, as a character, as a main character, it was very easy to imagine John in that role, because I'm a huge fan of John's, and to me, he can play a character very funny, and very, very flawed. But what's amazing about those characters that he creates is that I always care about them. I always love those characters, and I want them to achieve their goals and get what they want, even, if it's the character in Boogie Nights that wants to make his bad record, It's like it's as wrong-headed as anything, but I want him to get that, and it's just that speaks to John's, ability to just find the humanity in every character that he plays, and I wanted that for Ralph.
Can I change track
Sure.
for 1 second? So I'm wondering about, we talked a little bit earlier, like before the show, because we vacationed together and we had this, No, but the process of, so I'm guessing you were like a kid who loved to draw cartoons.
Yes.
And like kind of maybe a bit of a smart aleck or something. You ended up doing like, no. Doing, you don't know any math, so something happened there in school.
No
right?
math. Mm-hmm.
At what point do you go from a kid who loves to draw cartoons to being someone who thinks about caring about a character? Because that seems like that transition seems like a very adult, grown-up thing to, to transform as a storyteller into like, this is funny, to like, this is somebody that's gonna,
right.
be emotionally
I think
impactful
that's,
to me.
I can't say exactly when, I realized that component, of storytelling, but I think that's something as filmmakers or cartoonists or animators, that's something that they're always striving for, that not only that the characters, because as we create these characters, we create them to tell stories, and in order to do that, they have to kind of reflect, the audience in a way, or the wishes of the audience, or things and feelings and emotion that the audience themselves have felt. And that was something, going back to The Simpsons, I would say that's where I learned it, would be on The Simpsons in those early days, that it wasn't just the goal wasn't just to make a funny cartoon, and Jim Brooks himself would always say, like, look, guys, make the fact that it's a cartoon secondary. We don't want to be, we're not making a show that's trying to show off, the humor of animation or cartooning. We're making a sitcom, and it happens to be animated. That's where we sit with this thing, and with that information, I knew what he meant. Having watched a lot of sitcoms and watched a lot of sitcoms that he had produced and written, I knew exactly what he meant. And then it was learning, in practical terms, how to achieve that. And for me, it was never, losing sight of The Simpsons as a family.
Right.
That they were very dysfunctional, over the top dysfunctional. But at the end of the day, it was always my goal to depict them as a family. Like, this is the dad, the mom, and the kids and the baby, and they love one another, and within, this household, there's situations that get out of control, but they are a family, and I would kind of inject what I knew of my family, into them, and try to, create characters that would connect with the rest of the world. So I would say it was those informative, like, first years of The Simpsons where that clicked in my mind.
I'm gonna. I have some of these images of the development of Ralph. Could you give us like the director's commentary of, like, what do you think was going on at this point, and how did it get to the next level?
Well, at this point, there was a point in the development, looking at this picture right now, that this would speak to kind of how we find the process of finding the character, like who he is, what he looks like, how he's going to appear, in animation. And it was at this point that that we would depict Ralph a lot as like a beast or a monster, or sometimes an inanimate object. He was like a bulldozer at one time with a face and everything. We knew that he was something that destroyed things,
right.
That he was a wrecker. And this was before, and at the same time as this drawing or this painting was being produced and worked on, a story team was working on the story of the movie. And in doing that, we were discovering the main relationship that Ralph had in the movie with another character. And in filmmaking terms, or the way that we think about it, that main relationship between our main character and another one, between those two lies the heart, as they call the movie, of the story. So at this point, we didn't know, that Ralph and Vanellope would be the main, that their relationship
right.
would be the main one. And as the story kind of dictated, well, Ralph is going to become kind of this big brother. He starts out kind of like a kid, himself, as he's selfish and kind of immature. And he's going to meet this kid who's got things way worse than he does, and he's going to kind of mature into this kind of big brother, character to Vanellope. So as we start to kind of know that about the story, we look at this design, these ideas for who Ralph is, and this doesn't kind of play into that. When he was an ape or an animal, like this one, he seemed more like a big teddy bear or something to a little kid. It didn't seem like a big brother type of character. It seemed like Sully, to Boo, where she thought he was kind of like a doll or something. So at that point, once we knew, that the relationship between Ralph and Vanellope was the main one, and it was going to be, an immature guy kind of becoming a parental figure, to this kid, then we started to kind of refine. And as you can see, it came out just like this. And then it became more human,
sure.
Someone that could relate to the kid could relate to him as like an adult, and the two things kind of help, inform one another of where the design and the story goes.
Yeah. This is sort of kind of where you ended
up. And there he is.
So I know a lot of people at Google are, and maybe in the audience here, are really excited about the inclusion of the kind of pop culture crossover of video games in the movie. My favorite crossover is probably Q*bert.
Yes.
That was really...
probably mine too, I would say.
It was something about Q*bert was like, it scratched an itch for me. I don't know what that was. Because he's kind of weird, and he kind of hasn't really made it into this generation. But you still sort of love him anyway.
He's out there, he's out there, and he's iconic and just mysterious enough that there was never a lot of information behind him other than he was jumping around on a pyramid, changing colors.
And was he swearing? He had this weird language.
Was he talking? And the supporting cast was kind of cool, of these weird, teardrop shaped guys and a coiled snake, and very strange world. But super appealing.
Yeah, very appealing. I saw some other interviews that you did, and people always try to. There's a lot of video game outlets, and they'll be like, "So are you a gamer?" And I've seen you sort of struggle with the question, to be honest.
Well, because because that it means so many different things to different people.
Totally, yeah,
It's like I've talked to some people like, well, do you play Xbox Live? It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
well, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm making a movie, guys.
Yeah.
I don't have the time to get on there, and it's like, well, then you're not a gamer unless
Sure.
you're doing. So it seems like there's lots of different, definitions for it. But
Yeah.
if it means, am I someone, that as a kid, played games, and followed them through the different iterations of their history, then yes,
Sure.
So, and to be able to take a character like Hubert, like from my childhood, and be able to put it, next to a character that looks like he's right out of Halo,
Right.
to me is like that's better than any math.
Yeah.
That's better
Yeah.
than solving any math problem
There
to
you
me.
go. Take that. I thought I thought I also heard you'd mention something along the lines of like we're kind of at the point where video games are enough of a part of our culture where there
Yeah.
can be a rich universal story told there, and it might be
Right.
actually might be a new thing. It might be, only recently I think maybe. What do you think?
I think there's a good reason why this movie got traction right now, and I know at Disney they were trying to kind of crack this one for 15 years, I think, and without success up until about 4 years ago when we started to kind of work on this iteration of it. And it may speak more to kind of culturally, people being ready to hear a story like this with video games as the backdrop of of the story than they were maybe 10 years ago. It may have been, I think, like Roger Rabbit came out right at the right time for that kind of
Right.
movie, where those types of animation had been around long enough that children knew what it was, and very old people knew what it was. And I think we may be at that point with video games where it's the timing's appropriate, like it knew when it wanted to be made. I think so.
I think the Roger Rabbit of video games is a pretty apt. In many
That's
ways.
pretty cool
Yeah.
because I really
Yeah.
loved that
It's a
movie.
great movie, yeah.
I really.
I think it lives up to it too.
Yeah, and that's another one that right around the same time that I was working on Mighty Mouse, and Disney Studios was beginning to kind of go and launch into their second golden age, as they call it, with Little Mermaid. Roger Rabbit came out also, so there was all this there was like an explosion, of animation going on. It was right around the time that John Lasseter and Ed Catmull were beginning to kind of, roll with Pixar. So to have this called like the Roger Rabbit of video games, is quite it's an honor.
Deserved.
Thank you.
So this is actually the game in the movie, Wreck-It Ralph.
Right.
And there's an interesting divide in the movie, I think, between these types of like Donkey Kong, Pac-Man, sort of more friendly,
Right.
accessible games,
Right.
to the kind of horror world that Ralph
Hero's
finds
Duty.
of
Right.
Hero's Duty. I thought that was a really apt commentary because I'm someone who feels left behind in the ultra-violent, ultra-realistic, murky
Right. The
world.
horrific, video
like,
games.
Does that resonate with you, or what kind of commentary were you trying to make commentary there? Was it
Well, I mean, it was something that started more as a joke, and it's like the more, like any kind of thing, as people start to inject kind of a point of view to it, it becomes kind of commentary, and I think it began as just like, what would Donkey Kong think if he was thrown into Halo,
Right.
And it was like, and that's kind of
kind
like
of an awesome game, actually?
yeah. And it became just kind of like his thought on it. But it is interesting, that over why weren't the games ultra violent like that or back then? It's like, is it just because we need a bigger rush, or we need that we need we're callous, to the old ones? I don't know, but when you think about it, it does kind of, what I like about it is that it does give pause to kind of reflect, on something like that, because do people realize like, oh my God, they are pretty violent.
Sure.
I would hate for them not to, or to make them not violent, because I think, there is there is a reason and a need for that type of thing, but it is interesting. I find it is very interesting that over the course of 30 years, these things have become very, very graphic,
Right.
and I think if it opens up a discussion, then I think, that's good.
So another one of the games that they enter in the movie is Sugar Rush, which is kind of like a Mario Kart, racer game.
Candyland kind of all mixed together.
So here's something I thought was interesting in the film is that all the other games, like the Hero's Quest and the sort of Wreck-It Ralph, they have real life analogs.
Right.
But I wonder, this is like the ultra girly, sort of
right.
clearly marketed towards women video games. Those don't really exist. Like,
Right.
has
We
the
started
industry
more-
failed women, or is that just a stupid stereotype that shouldn't be pursued anyway? Or
Well, with Sugar Rush, we were trying to play it more like it was for children. If Hero's Duty was more, adult and graphic, and more for men, that this was for little children, So, but as to have women been left behind, that's, I don't know. I guess like it doesn't seem like all I know is that my daughter, let's say, that this was her favorite type of game, like Mario Kart. That was one.
Yeah, my sister destroys me in Mario Kart.
It's the day that my daughter beat me in Mario Kart was the day that I knew, I should hang it up, but I didn't, So I just go by what I know, and that was always a game, that in my house, was popular, by not just for just my daughter, but my son too. So it was more kind of trying to depict something like that, just to give the contrast of these two worlds and Ralph's journey of, going from one that's like this and,
extremely
violent,
Right.
And going to very
Super
friendly
saccharine.
and kid friendly, but also it's the point in the story where what I like about it is that it's this very saccharine sweet type of place, but holds kind of the most nefarious,
Right.
secret of the story in it,
Right.
So
No spoilers.
no. Mm-mm.
So, okay, talking a bit about the story. Has anybody, saved the cat? The idea.
Right.
I have to totally call you on this, like when Q-Bert gets
when
the
he
cherry.
gave the cherry, yeah.
That's a total
Yeah.
save the cat moment. I don't know. I don't know. I thought
It kind of is, yeah. It kind of is.
That's cool.
But it's cool, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, it
I
works.
think
It totally works.
I think it was, and that book does float around at our studio a lot.
Sure.
Some people that's their Bible, you know, and some people Robert McKee's
So
story is
for
their
anybody
Bible.
who
but-
doesn't know, and I've never read this book, and I'm a total hack in most things in life, including knowing.
well,
understanding
it
story
comes
structure.
from. Do you know what movie it comes from?
No, I don't actually.
Neither do I, off the top of my head. But
Home Alone
but the-
3,
but-
pretty
yeah.
sure.
But the one that they always cite is Sea of Love with Al Pacino, where he's playing like this undercover cop. That the movie begins with all these dads coming in with their sons, thinking that they're going to get free tickets to a baseball game, and it turns out the whole thing is a sting operation, that all these dads are criminals, and it's been set up by Al Pacino,
So he seems like a bad guy.
yeah, who seems like, oh, that's cold, man. And so as he's leaving the sting, they're locking all these guys up. Actually, no, the guys are coming in without their sons. It's just a bunch of guys coming in to get free tickets. And then as Pacino's leaving in the hallway, the last crook is kind of coming in. He's late, and he's brought his son with him, his little kid,
I see.
and says like, Am I too late for the free tickets? And Pacino, seeing this, he doesn't want the kid to see his dad get cuffed. He's like, no, we're all out. You missed it, man. Maybe next time. And the guy gets to go away free. But we feel like the Pacino's got a heart, that he's not just a tough, mean cop, that, he cares about this guy's kid seeing him get locked up. So that's where it comes from.
Fair
and
enough,
it is kind of one of those moments.
I think there's a lot of, there's one, can I spoil one thing in the movie? Is that okay? Can I
Sure,
whisper it?
the whole ending.
Can I whisper it into your ear what it is?
Okay. I think that's okay. I
Okay.
think that's,
So I don't know if you, I like characters, a character arc of a story.
yeah.
Close your ears if you don't hear this. It's an extremely minor plot point. But one
It's
thing
minor. It's
I love
minor.
the way that, this develops characters and the way the characters have an arc in this film. It's a
Yeah.
really good movie. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
But the one thing is that you can't leave this movie saying that the main character didn't change because in the beginning he doesn't like chocolate, and in the end he likes chocolate. So like at least you have that.
Yeah. That's not the one you just whispered to me. You just ruined the whole movie for these people.
Well,
I thought we were friends. I thought I could trust you. You invite me to Google, and
well. I mean, there's a lot
We're
of
joking,
there's a million
he
clever
does.
there's a million clever things in the movie. Do you want to so a couple here like do you want to talk about Grand Central Grand
Central Station.
All right, bring it on.
Well, that would be once we made the decision to set the whole thing in an arcade. We knew we wanted the characters to be able to visit one another in the different cabinets. So as Phil Johnston and I were trying to kind of crack, like, well, how are they going to go from game to game? And the process that we use, is we just kind of throw out any idea. Like how about this?
Sure.
Where we weren't afraid to say anything dumb or and for there was a good 2 weeks where we thought, okay, this is it. The device that they're going to use to travel from game to game is that in a toilet there is a vortex. And for at least 2 weeks we thought, this is not leaving this is in the final movie. This is so good. It means nothing. I mean, it has nothing to do with video games, it has nothing to do with anything. But at that point in developing the story, we thought it was great,
Sure.
And then 2 weeks go by and we thought, the toilet vortex thing is not, not so good. And Phil was living in Brooklyn at the time, and I was flying out there a lot to New York to work with him. And this is one of those stories that you go, oh, come on, please. But we were, Phil was going back to Brooklyn. I was in Manhattan, staying in a hotel, and we'd walked over to Grand Central Station. I was walking him to his train. He's like, man, I think that it should just be like this, It should just be like this. What if it should just be like a big Grand Central Station, but it's in the power strip or something, And that's where these trains, these are the plugs, These are the plugs. And I was like, yeah, we could, and it'd be like Game Central Station, right? And he's like, yeah, it could just be something simple like that, And we kind of.
It works.
And we were like, are we having an idea right now? Is this,
Did
is
you
this
hug or something?
No,
Or
it was just kind of, we got very quiet and kind of a little like an animal gets kind of bristly after it's done, like it's what it's built to do, where it's like kind of, like gorillas or something.
Yeah.
It was like looking at one another and thinking, okay, I think something just happened here, and we agreed, okay, before we decide anything, let's sleep on it, and see what we think in the morning, and we both, as soon as we got up, like texted each other, I really like that Game Central Station, idea, so, and that's what it was kind of born from, so. So if you're ever trying to figure something out, I recommend going to New York,
Right.
go to Grand Central Station,
Right.
walk around with your friend.
I'll do it.
It comes like that.
Well, like animals that have finished building what they came out to build. That's
Animals don't build, well, beavers do.
Beavers do.
They do, yeah. You're right.
Ants.
They do.
Bees.
All right. Yeah, they build.
Termites.
Yeah.
So if there are any audience questions, there's a microphone floating around that Chris has, and he will pass it around.
How do you, from a
This
director's
is going to be a
role,
hard one. I can
Yeah.
tell. I can
Gaming here.
already tell this is going to go for the throat.
It's going to be a math question.
Yeah.
It's going to be a math question.
Yeah.
2 + 2 = window.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, how do you as a director keep your team motivated, especially your artists, since it's such a long endeavor?
That's a good question. Well, it is a long endeavor, and we worked for 4 years on this movie, and sometimes animated films could go on for like 8 years. There's some that have gone on for 10 years in development and production. What's interesting is too, it's a very non-spontaneous process, and my job is to, by the end, make the whole experience, what the audience is seeing, feel as if they're watching it kind of happen right before their eyes, as if it was live action, captured on film. So I would say the way that I kind of keep that exciting or spontaneous is just to we challenge each other, in making the artwork or the performance the best that it can be. I think that I work with a group of people that really want the best out of everything that they do. So they're looking, to me for guidance on this kind of thing. And I would say what keeps it interesting and satisfying for the artist and myself is that I never, I remind myself I'm a director. I'm not a dictator. I'm not there to dictate to someone, no, do it like this. I want it yellow and I want it like this and I want, my job is to kind of bring out what this person can bring to the idea, not tell them. To me, they're not just a wrist, and that's where the best of someone comes, the best of an artist or a technician or a production person working on the movie. So I always try to encourage the crew to take ownership of what they're doing, to not look to me for the final answer. I'm not going to tell you exactly how to do it. I want you to discover it, because you are going to bring something to it that I'm not thinking of. Your point of view is going to make it better, So I try not to dictate. I try not to tell people exactly, how they should do it, because to me, there's no fun in that. It's not fun for me. It's not fun for the artist. The fun is to kind of watch the thing grow, as different minds are kind of put onto it. Mm-hmm.
Hi. So I was delighted by the way you captured the essence of the 80s era video games like Donkey Kong and Rampage and Elevator Action in the Wreck-It Ralph game.
Thank you.
I'm curious what was your creative process for imagining that game, and what was the technical process for developing the
actual
visuals?
game? What we did is, and that was one of the first things that we kind of dove into, was the actual gameplay or just concept of that world, like what it was about. And the process was working with the story crew and the design crew of just kind of creating boards at first, putting up images of games that we thought that this was like. It's kind of like Donkey Kong. It's kind of like Rampage, and then breaking down what made those games unique. How much detail did they have to them? What were the goals? And what made them appealing? And then beginning a lot of visual just boards of different people's ideas of what can the gameplay be like, starting with this idea of one guy fixes, one guy wrecks, and it was months and months and months of, it did not happen overnight. It was a lot of experimentation and a lot of going back to those old games, because it's, I found for me, it was one thing to kind of remember them fondly, and have nostalgic feelings for them, but to go back and then just to see them again with a more critical eye, and more kind of study them, was a whole different kind of experience altogether for myself. So it was a lot of trial and error. It was a lot of trying different things and trying to kind of capture the just kind of offbeat nature of them. They're kind of funky in their, in their concepts, and that's where the idea of fixing a broken window with a hammer, came from, because it doesn't make any sense, but it seemed like, but that seems like what they would have had in one of those old games, So we never let logic, ruin, any of the good ideas. So, and again, it was a lot of trial and error. It was a lot of going back and forth. And then we made we tried designing kind of a very crude version of the game, what the graphics would look like, and I think we did that in Flash. And as we got further into production, we knew we wanted to build an actual cabinet with the game, in it that was playable. And for that, we went to someone who programmed programmed games back in that time period, and he used, the 8-bit boards, and there's a CRT in it. We wanted it to be as authentic as it could be. And because of making that one game, the studio realized, well, this would be great. People would love this. Like if we built a bunch of these things and took them around the country, like put them in theaters and at old arcades that still exist. So the first one that we built was made out of a gutted, it was a Donkey Kong game. So the studio was saying, we would love 50 to 60 of these things. So not wanting to be the studio that put 50 Donkey Kong, out of commission, cabinets out of commission, we decided, well, we're going to build them from the ground up, So I think a couple were here. Did they bring some over?
Nobody let me play anything.
And
no.
Google, I'm sorry. I feel like a jerk now.
Thanks a lot.
But
movies in color, everybody. That's it.
why?
Program's
Why? But they did a great job of weathering them. They really feel like that they're 30 years old, and they play very much like those old games. So really proud of them, and it happened kind of right in tandem with the movie. So we made a movie and a game. Pretty good, huh?
Not too bad.
All right. So in seeing you with your classmates and hearing you talk about them and that experience, I realized you must have been there at the same time that my roommate's grandfather was teaching. And I was wondering if you could say something a little bit about the teachers, and specifically if you
wow, that
if you
makes
remember
me feel.
Bob McCrae.
My father's daddy pop's uncle was there. About the teachers that were at CalArts? Who was
Bob McCrae?
Oh, Bob McCrae was the director of the program at the time, and he was a wonderful teacher. He was someone that worked at Disney during the golden age of animation, and he was kind of a father figure to us. He had Hal Lambro was our animation teacher. Our design teacher was Bob Winquist, and Bob actually took over for Bob Winquist took over for Bob McCrae because he became ill during he was very old during our sophomore year, and Bob became the director of the department our junior year, and I really, really loved Bob Winquist. He was someone that not only was he a great designer, and a great design teacher, but he had a way of talking to us in our class that he was very nurturing. He really knew how to kind of bring out the best in people. People in our class who did not consider themselves designers, by the end of his classes, really felt like, wow, I never knew I could design something, but I didn't know I had this in me. So he was just someone that really. He really fostered that feeling in us that we could do something in animation. We had some teachers we had one teacher in particular who felt it was his job to teach us another vocation because he said we would never make it in animation, that animation was, a dying business and it was going nowhere. So we really knew how to paint. We would have to know how to paint paintings to be Denny's menus covers, So he thought he was helping us, but Bob Winquist would really, he really instilled in us this feeling that if enough people with a passion for something were to go out into the world, that you could change it, and that you could bring back an art form that seemed at that time to be there's nothing going on, it was dead, and I credit him a lot for giving us, or just awakening up our ability to have vision, for the future and our careers and our lives. So, and I miss him a lot. He passed away 3 years ago, and he was a wonderful guy. And so many people, credit him as just an instrumental figure at that school at the time.
Do we have time for one more question? This man came all the way from Los Angeles.
All the way from L.A.
The land of video game arcades that we'll never be able to play. One more in the middle over here.
So one thing that's really interesting to me is you talk a lot about how, Ralph had to go back and be redesigned several times, and
Yes.
the game had to go back and be redesigned, and like every element, it seems like you chose like 30 different things before you finally decided on one. Have you ever reached a point when
I'm
making-
indecisive. I'm
I'm not
wishy-washy.
going to tell you what to do. It's just going to...
Yeah, he flip-flops. He's a waffler.
So it seems to me like a movie is a very, like a really great
we were
movie.
going to have a debate.
Yeah, with more
I'm sorry.
conflict.
So my question basically stems from the fact that a great movie seems to be a very delicate balance of a lot of things.
Yes.
And in being so indecisive, you find that balance. But have you ever gotten maybe like halfway through making a movie before realizing your entire premise was wrong and either giving up or starting over on everything?
Well, that has not happened to me personally, but I know some people that has happened to. So it does exist, it does exist, or they won't give up on the whole thing, but they will try to take elements of something that's not working and reimagine it as something else, and I think that having that ability to do that at a studio, and it sounds scary and it sounds like it's a horrible thing, but some really good movies have come out of moments like that, where they were going in one direction and turned into something else, and movies at Pixar have things like that have happened, and I think it speaks a lot to the management of the studios like Pixar and like Disney that are willing to give the artists and the directors the room to make mistakes and to try different things and to really take a stab at something and gamble, and if it didn't work, then it didn't work, so now let's try something that did work. And that's what we always tried to do on this movie, was to be wrong quickly. Let's just try to, let's throw it out there and see if it works. And if it doesn't, okay, we know what we're shooting for. We knew early on this movie who our characters were, when we when Phil and I were designing the characters and putting together the cast, so we knew from a very early point in the development of the film who those characters were, and the story changed, quite a few times. We knew exactly what we wanted to happen to Ralph at the end, so the mechanics of the thing changed, and we got there to the one that we have now, the final one, by trying lots of different things, and it doesn't just happen like that overnight. It takes time to kind of let these things percolate, and the whole thing has an organic feeling to it. It grows at its own pace, I believe. I think the ideas will, things will happen when they want to happen. Things will be solved when they need to be solved. And for me, it's just being patient enough to kind of let it happen.
So one quick follow-up. I kind of have a theory that a lot of the really great shorts come from movies that just couldn't be like fished out as long as they wanted to. Do you know if any of those were just made from elements of a failed path?
What, like the Pixar shorts, or the
just, yeah, like the
or
Pixar
shorts like the classic shorts, or just shorts in general?
Whatever you know about.
No, I think a lot of the shorts that you see like before a Pixar movie or a Disney movie did begin as a short. They were imagined as shorts. I can't think of one off the top of my head that began as something more than a short. And usually they've began as avenues for a new director, to try his hands at directing or getting his feet wet, in something a little more manageable than a feature film. but yeah, I can't really think of something that. It's a good theory, you know. I credit you on that, you know.
Thanks.
It's astute, you know, but I don't have any evidence to back up your theory.
Rich Moore, thank you so much for coming to
Thank
Google.
you.
It was
Thank
truly
you.
a pleasure.
Thank you, Google.
Movie
real
is Wreck-It-
pleasure.
Movie is Wreck-It Ralph. It's in theaters November 2nd, and it's in color. So check
In
it out.
color, you know, glorious color. Thank you very much, everybody.